Hey Moz fans, here's another edition of Whiteboard Friday. I'm Niki Mosier, a tech SEO manager at Seer Interactive, and I'm here today to talk to you about the not-so-secret value of podcast transcripts. So I got the idea to play around with podcast transcripts after hearing Moz's Brittany Muller talk about machine learning and podcast transcripts at Tech SEO Boost last fall. I ended up getting the opportunity to play around with this a little bit with a pro bono client we had at a previous job, the Davis Phinney Foundation. They do Parkinson's research and Parkinson's education. So they were already podcasting, and then they also had a pretty robust blog, but they weren't adding their podcast transcripts. So after about 3 months of adding a couple of podcast transcripts, we saw some pretty good value for them. We saw a 15% increase in organic traffic to the website and a 50% increase to some keyword lift around the keywords that we were tracking. Why we think this is relevant right now, as you may know, Google announced at I/O a couple weeks ago that they are indexing podcasts. If you do a search for your favorite podcast, you'll see that come up in the Google search results now. So adding that podcast transcript or any audio transcript to your website, whether that's video, a webinar, anything, just has some really good value. Going to walk you through the process that I use for them, super easy, and you can turn around and apply it to your own website. So obviously download the audio file, whether that's MP3, MP4, whatever you have from your video podcast or your webinars if you're doing those. Transcribe it, you need to be able to get that text transcript, so running it through either Temi or Otter.ai, both two resources that I've used. Both really good. Otter.ai seems to be a little cleaner out of the gate, but I would definitely obviously go through and edit and make sure that all of your text and speaker transitions and everything is accurate. Next steps, figuring out what keywords that you want that content to rank for. So doing some search volume research, figuring out what those keywords are, and then benchmarking that keyword data. So whether your website's already ranking for some of those keywords or you have new keywords that you want those pages or those posts to be ranking for. Next step is getting a competitive snapshot. So looking at who's ranking for those keywords that you're going to be trying to go after, who has those answer boxes, who has those featured snippets, and then also what are the people always ask. People also ask features for those keywords. On site, so obviously getting that content on your site, whether that's creating brand new content, either a blog or a page to go with that podcast, video, webinar, whatever it is, or adding it to existing content. Maybe you have some evergreen content that's not performing well for you anymore. Adding a transcript to that content could really kind of give it a lift and make it work better for you. Next step is optimizing the content on your site. So adding in those keywords to your metadata, to your image alt tags, your H1 tags, and then also adding any relevant schema. So whether that's blog post schema, most likely, or any other schema type that would be helpful, getting that up there on the page as well. Once you've done all the hard work, you've got the transcript up there, you have your content, you have it optimized, you obviously want to tell Google. So going into Search Console, having them index that page, whether it's a new page or an existing page, either way, dropping that URL in there, making sure Google's crawling it, and then if it is a new page, making sure it's in your sitemap. And then last thing is you want to be able to track and figure out if it's working for you. So annotating that in Google Analytics so you know what page, when you added it, so you can have that benchmark date, looking at where you're ranking, and then also looking at those SERP features. Have you gotten any featured snippets? Are you showing up in those answer boxes? Anything like that. So it's kind of the process, super easy, pretty straightforward. Just play with it, test it out. And then kind of lastly, why is this still important if Google's already indexing podcasts? They may come out and do their own transcription of your podcast or your video or whatever content you have on the site. Obviously, you want to be in control of what that content is that's going on your site. And then also just having it on there is super important from an accessibility standpoint. You want Google to be able to know what that content is, and you want anyone else who may have a hearing impairment, they can't listen to the content that you're producing. You want them to be able to access that content. And then, as always, just the more content, the better. So get out there, test it, and have fun. Thanks, Moz fans.